Hey everyone, welcome. It is episode 11 of Ask an Agent Anything. My name is Corianne. If you don't know me already, please hit me up on IG because I'd like to get to know you better. But I am an agent here in Colorado. I also buy and invest in Florida and Colorado. I am here with my all-time favorite agent, like I do. Renee is in the house. How are you doing?
Hey, LA Renee, how you like me? SoCal gal. Yeah, I'm not as cool as Corianne. I'm not bi-coastal yet. So I stay in my own backyard. So I've been a residential real estate agent for over 18 years. Yes, we are aging backwards here in LA. That's what we do. But 18 years and I've done it all. So yeah, I'm excited to be jumping into this conversation with you guys. And yeah, if anybody's in the California market, I still do some stuff in NorCal, mostly representing SoCal, LA, and all of SoCal. So yeah, let's get into it. I love it, Corianne. Lots of news in the news.
Yes, there is. And if you guys are new to Ask an Agent Anything, let me just kind of catch you up on the spiel here because Renee and I are on the phone anyway. Honestly, like I need at least an hour of Renee a week, and I would be on the phone asking her questions, just using her expertise in real estate over the last 18 and a half years. I I try to get as much information out of that brain as I can. I've only been licensed for about 3 years, but I've been investing for about five. So I need her expertise. I need her energy. And we would be having this conversation anyway. You are lucky to be here. Join. We want your voice in this conversation as well, which is why we really say ask an agent anything, is we could go rogue on any one of your questions. We will talk all about what's going on in our businesses and we get real nitty gritty and honest there. So if you're joining us for the first time, welcome. I'm glad you're here. We get real in real estate.
I
Let
love
me
that. Oh, the real in real estate, putting the real in real estate. There you go. Yeah, we don't always
absolutely.
talk about that, right? I started my career prior to social media. I mean, I can't even believe I'm saying that, but cell phones existed, but social media really wasn't around. Maybe Facebook was, but certainly not what it is today. And nobody knew what you were really doing. And the agent was the gatekeeper of information, right? And now you can choose to expose yourself. However, do people even really know what you're doing anyway? Because it's kind of whatever you want to present. So I like that you just said putting the real in real estate because, this business is very simple and it's not easy most of the time. It's incredibly challenging mentally and sometimes spiritually. It'll tax you. I always used to say in the beginning that it's the most faith-based, non-denominational business you'll ever be in. Sometimes you just got to present what you have and then like throw the rest over the fence and hope for the best, right? And just talking to a friend the other day, she's a big sports person, and I was saying that sometimes this business is like the Super Bowl, and you just drop the ball in the end zone. It's like, oh my God, you got to give yourself 5 minutes to kick the can down the road and then forget about it because the next play is up, and that's it. That's what real estate's about. It's going to tax you. So yeah, I love having those conversations about it. It's not just pretty houses. It's not the Bravo and the $1 million listing and all that. It's everything that goes on behind it, including some of those people that sell at the high end. They still
Mhm.
get in the trenches and do the dirty work. They don't talk about it necessarily, but they do the dirty work. They do what needs to get done to get the deal, hopefully ethically.
I
So,
promised we would talk about scripting and some of your
yeah.
language, and I want to go down that route, but real quick rabbit hole because it's so funny you brought this up. I was kind of having an internal dialogue about an hour ago. I was searching through Instagram, and I am constantly up against finding so many people who are no longer in real estate doing the
Mhm.
work, but talking about real estate and bringing in leads that way. And as somebody who's like pretty creative, I like video creation, I could show up that way. I was like, is this what real estate is now? Is it really just knowledge on Instagram being shared just topically to bring in leads? Or how do the people who are truly doing the work, who are out there for sellers, stand out in that kind of world?
Ooh, that's a good question. Oh yeah, right. I want to answer it as a senior, or maybe I say experience by time, but also by deals, in the time I've been in the business. Real estate is a relationship-based business. And so at the end of the day, you are wanting to create an actual business based on that. And so, how do I answer that? I think it's really
Your mind
just a matter. It's really a matter of two things. One is, I think, keeping in front of people and being your authentic self, because really, any state that you're in, the paperwork is the same, right? It's going to read the same. So let's say your residential purchase agreement, it's the same words on the same page. The difference is, who are you going to be for your client? As a personality, we're part-time psychologists. This is a really big deal for a lot of people. So you need to be there for your clients and be that anchor and be the voice of reason for them while they're making their decisions, as well as being a guide. Because just because you have the same page, the same words on the same page that everyone else does, how are you going to construct that deal? So that's really the experience. And so, again, back to my opinion, I think it's one thing to present, and that's sort of capturing attention. We're in an attention economy right now. That's capturing the attention. And that's important. We're always capturing attention. It used to be newspapers. Now it's social media. It's like, it's just that medium changes, but it's the same principle. And so once you get somebody's attention, what are you going to do with it? And how are you going to sustain that relationship in the long term? I don't hear much of that conversation happening, partially because some of the agents are older by age and maybe not as interested. Maybe they don't have to go out and hustle as hard. They have the inbound calls coming. And so we don't hear about the expertise and how are they actually keeping their clients versus somebody who's maybe in their 20s or 30s and they're just kind of starting out and they're using social media as their medium and they're just wanting to capture all the attention. But my question is, what are they doing, or what are you doing to retain? It's a lot about retention, right? That's where the repeat and referral comes into, because are you just going to keep chasing transactions, or are you going to have repeat and referral business? So I don't know if I really answered the question, but I wanted to throw that out there as food for thought, kind of like a newer agent mentality / somebody who's younger that grew up with social media meets maybe somebody who's a little bit older. I'm a Gen Xer, so I'm kind of caught in the middle. I didn't grow up with all this, but I still utilize it. And I don't hear that conversation, Corey. And I think you and I should talk about that more, if not today, on another call, how to retain the business. How are you actually getting the repeat and referral business, especially from traditional retail, not just, the investor or wholesaling side of things, which is very transactional and it's exhausting. If you don't have repeat and referral inbound calls, you're going to be chasing that deal every time. That's great when you're 20, not when you're in your 50s. It's exhausting. So you got to ask yourself that question.
And it's sort of the bells it clicks off for me is that's the conversation of how much outbound do you do versus how much internal do you do, because the work behind the scenes to be great at contracts, to be great at guiding buyer, seller, investor through a process, it's work that often is hard to put out in front of people. But the places I see it do best is where they are really showing behind the scenes. And then that's kind of one of the things that you and I are doing here is like, here's what's really going on in our business. Here's literally what was going on in my head today while I was on Instagram. And how do we sort of sort through those so that we're showing up as authentically as possible and also garnering the kinds of business that we can handle,
Yeah, to kind of put, a pin in that, it really goes back to personal development, honestly, because we're essentially selling ourselves. Any kind of service-based business where you're the face of it, maybe doctors, lawyers, what we're doing as real estate agents / investors, we're in essence the face of it. And so the more you can peel back the layers of yourself, and I'm of the belief that, you will show up more authentically, and it's a painful process. It's looking under the rocks, looking at the dirty corners. I think in your generation, it would be talking about like the woke generation, but I'm also speaking about really doing the dig. No one gets out alive. No one comes into this life without their traumas and their dramas. And to me, that's painful yet exciting because it's a place to look. And I've noticed that in my development as a person, and let alone as a person, right, and then a person within my career, that the more that I unveil who I am, like to myself or to kind of my intimate circle, that ends up showing up, out on the streets. And it's really, more business comes from it. You know, we're energies. We're just energies. So your like is going to attract your like. And early on in my career, I feel like I had more difficult and challenging, and I wasn't sure always how to handle it. I mean, I always did well and I always showed up, but it was exhausting. Now I get something that's difficult. I don't always like it, but it's not as exhausting anymore because I have a sense of who I am and the boundaries that I have, the thresholds that I have, and I'm willing to say no. You know, I'm willing to also not work with a client and or lovingly, they probably wouldn't know, but also hand that client off. Maybe they would be better for somebody else and not my personality. So it's not always about the money. You can't say that so much when you're young, but when you get a little bit older and wiser, you're like, you know, my human minutes means more to me and my peace of mind means more to me than just hustling for $1. I can't say I would have said that when I was in my 20s, but you learn the hard way. So some food for thought, definitely.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And it's funny enough, on my whiteboard that's right in front of me, it's really actually the window to the mountains. I have a couple of notes every now and then. And this morning I wrote down something that I think serves for both the how do you share authentically question, but also how do you show up deal to deal to deal. And I wrote down, why not let it be easy? Question mark. And I think that comes down to, oh, this isn't the right deal for me and the structure I'm in right now. Who can I benefit with this deal? Just like you said, who can I pass this off, or how might I be able to work this differently? And as an artist, like coming up with creative ways to structure a deal or creative ways to even approach it, I get excited. Even if I'm talking to the agent and I'm like, hey, did you think about this structure? And then maybe going and taking that to somebody else, I will have those conversations because I mean, we do business together. Like that's always going to be reciprocated. That's the energy I want my deals to have. So that's the energy I want to put out there. Why not let it be?
Isn't it fun? Why not? Yeah, you know, this is a lone wolf kind of business in a lot of ways. And maybe I'm speaking because, you know, Los Angeles is an expensive area. Homes are expensive. I'm not going to be popular for saying this, but the truth is that you don't really have to hustle all that hard. You know, you can sell 10, 20 homes a year to your friends, to your intimate circle. You don't really have to get out there and make cold calls or door knock or do any of the things that I talk to other people in other states that have to sell 2 to 3 times as many homes as I would just based on the cost, you know, what the commission is, right? And you know, it's interesting. I just don't see people hustling as hard. And I don't love that word, but I know that probably the audience can understand what that is in that way, right? In the way that you're collaborative. So a lot of people are just really lone wolves. They're not on a team. They don't have a real big business. They just are kind of themselves and doing deals. And so it doesn't really occur to them to collaborate. But man, I tell you, the more this business changes, which we're going to get into that topic, I assert that the more we need to lock arms, you know, as agents and even investors and agents together, you know, to collaborate, because it's getting really intense out there. And to just hang out by yourself and consider that a business with any amount of longevity or the ability to scale, you can do that for a little while, but it's almost an impossibility for the future if that's where your, you know, thought process is for being in this business for any amount of time. So again, more food for thought. But yeah, let's get into it.
I would love that. Now, today we're talking about emotional scripting, right?
Yeah, we can talk about that. Sure.
Because I've been on the phones, honestly, nonstop right up until this moment. And one of the big things that I had reached out to you about is how do you approach as an agent investor in regards to like just picking up the phone? What are some of the things that you look out for immediately?
Well, for the audience, so right now I'm not going direct to seller. I did start out my career there. I'm just making a choice to actually prospect my fellow agents. So when I call, I'm a little bit different than some of the messaging you're going to hear from wholesaling teachers or coaches. I think their messaging is mostly call as the investor. That makes a lot of sense if you do not have your license. Or maybe you're new and you have your license and you don't feel comfortable because you've just gotten it and you're like, I'm not really one or the other. You know, I'm not an agent necessarily. I don't know what I'm doing. Let me just get on the phones. But what I've done is I've really taken my experience and being an agent, really, it's thrown out there a little bit on the internet, is I would be known as a unicorn agent or an agent who is investor friendly, because that has been my niche primarily, is working with investors of all ilk. So it could be ready to issues, it could be small lot development, it could be wholesaling. It's just really any exit strategy. So when I get on the phone, I'm coming from a place of service for my fellow agent. And for those of you in the audience who know Gary Vaynerchuk, he wrote a book called Jab, 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 Right Hook. And what I got from that book in a couple of sentences is basically give, 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 ask. So instead of calling my fellow agent and saying, what do you have that I can buy? And whether I'm an investor or I have a buyer for it, I come at it as, hey, my name is Renee. I'm a fellow agent here in town. And I primarily work with off-market properties. And sometimes I just don't have the right buyer for it. Instead of throwing it away, I wanted to reach out to you and ask you, what are your investors buying right now? And maybe you and I could put a deal together. That's actually my script, cold. I don't know that agent. And so what I'm giving them is an opportunity to say, hey, I want to bring you some business. So that's one jab, right? And then I'm building a relationship with this person. So you don't want to fire hose people too much because we listen through our own filters. So if I give them too much information before I allow them to talk, then I'm just going to basically railroad them with information. So I stop talking. I ask them that question for two reasons. One is I want to bring value. Two is, are they even a full-time agent? Are they even working with investors? Is this even an agent that's a right fit for me? And then I can kind of categorize them, right? So the intent is to bring value to my fellow agent by saying in the background, okay, I'm not actually saying this, but hey, we are having a housing crisis in this country. I will speak to Los Angeles because this is where I live, or Southern California. We've always had a housing crisis here. I've lived here for 25 years. I was putting in offers right when I moved here to buy stuff prior to me even having a license. And I was always like 4th or 10th or 12th, offer going in. It's been nuts. So it's never changed. So I'm saying, hey, agent, guess what? I know that there's a housing crisis because I'm a fellow agent. And I want to give you the opportunity to see if we're a match and we want to work together because I have a quality problem. I have too much opportunity. So who do you know that might be able to match make the opportunity that I have? That's what I'm really saying. And it's a tell because a lot of agents will just say, oh, I don't have anybody. I don't know. It's like they can't think out of the box. They're just, okay, let me just sell pretty house. But I'm saying to them, guys, I have opportunity. If you don't have the right buyer, how about we collaborate together and maybe you can go find the buyer for me, for us. So there's a lot in the background that I'm listening for. Anyway, that is my initial script. And then I have a follow-up campaign in my customer relationship management or CRM system where, it's industry standard that it's about 8 to 12 touches. This is anybody kind of across the board. I don't even think it's just real estate. People have to know, like, and trust you. They don't really want to do business with you right out of the gate if they don't know you, unless they have a need or a pain point. Most people don't initially. So it's going to require me to follow up with them over time. And then they will come to know, like, and trust me because I've been consistent. And to me, consistency breeds trust. I've said that before on the show. So I'm saying a lot here. I'm going to let you chime in, but I want to throw that out there because there's a lot in the unspoken. This is the nuance of experience, especially in sales. You want to take all that you're learning and listening for, and then present that to the people that you're talking to and allow them to discover it for themselves. I presented this agent with an opportunity. I want to hear what they're going to say to me. And then I'm going to listen for, do I want to do business with this person? So thoughts, questions, hallucinations just on that.
Ooh, juicy, juicy. I am a little mind boggled. Like, I almost feel like I need to practice that because I'm so interested in the kinds of responses you get, because it does not matter whether you are an agent or whether you're an investor approaching agents. You need to be able to know who's actually doing the work, because time is money, money is time, and we don't want to waste it on somebody who's giving us maybe some of that facade we were talking about earlier without the actual meat of doing the work. And the work is hard. Like, if you're in real estate, it's you've got to show up, and I think the showing up is the hardest part. And I don't like talking to agents who aren't out there looking for listings and reaching out to sellers. And so can you tell me a little bit more about what is the general response you get? Is it that shutdown and unable to think creatively?
Sadly, yes. Sadly.
Wow.
And by no means do I want to throw anybody under the bus. There are some people that have been in this industry for a really long time and they just don't have the chutzpah for it anymore. They're just waiting for the inbound calls. So, categorically, there's that, like on a bell curve, there's some people on the way out for retirement. There's maybe the part-timers. So with respect to where anybody is in their process, because again, I want to preface this by sounding respectful, because it definitely could be heard as not respectful. My typical response is no, I have nothing. I get these calls all the time. It's very defensive. It's very reactionary and defensive. I very rarely hear an inquiry or a curiosity of like, this is really interesting. Like, I appreciate the hustle. Again, that word is not my favorite, but the audience will understand. I appreciate like what this person is up to. Even if it doesn't apply to me, I appreciate that they're out there taking their human minutes, doing their prospecting, trying to create business, and realizing that, wow, she might have something that is coming in at her, but instead of it just being, oh, it doesn't fit my box, let me share on the wealth. I don't hear that as often. And guys, I make I should say conversations between follow-ups and cold outbound calls, et cetera, some kind of form of actual communication, a minimum of 40 to 50 times per working day. I'm talking to a lot of people over 18 years, do the numbers. And if I'm telling you that my average response is a stiff arm, it's telling me that it's not a very creative environment. I'm dumbfounded when I find somebody else who's an agent unicorn who's like, yeah, I know what you're talking about. I'm picking up what you're putting down. Yeah, I talk to investors like, let's do something. How are you doing this? How am I going to get paid? Like, what's the thing? And we answer all those questions. And then, we're like on a first date, like we left it, like, hey, you want to go on a second date? And it's like, yeah, cool. But man, I can barely get past, dinner and drinks with half these people. It's like, dang, you guys, I'm bringing you a gift and you're just like giving it back to me. It's kind of how it feels sometimes, more often, probably 35 to 45 times a day, it's unfortunate.
Well, that's the attitude to have, right? Is that I'm here to bring you opportunity. I'm here because I have capital I need to deploy and I need somewhere to drop it. Do you have a property we could work together on? And I am kind of surprised that in the midst of us seeing so many shifts that are going to happen between now and truly the beginning of summer for realtors, that they aren't more open in at least many of the calls that I've had. And again, nobody under the bus here, to looking at other ways of adding to your business. And one of those is to allow yourself to go after ugly properties and sell those to the investors that want to spruce them up. And who knows, maybe even relist them with you.
I want to put something else out there. Yes to that. And I know that, you and I are in a program that primarily talks about finding ugly houses. And that is the lowest hanging fruit. But I want to bring just a little bit of a senior conversation to this and not step over it. I think this is the appropriate time to say something. Whether you're an agent or not, but you are wholesaling, let's say, and you're just an investor, and this goes both ways, agent or investor, you don't have to be licensed to do this. But guys, whatever opportunities are coming your way, let me use the flipper / wholesaler example. Most of the time, a wholesaler is going to want to have a property that has the most meat on the bone, if you will, because you're going to be tacking on fees on that. Okay, that's the shortest version of wholesaling. Now, if you get something that comes your way that might not be that, I implore you to not leave money on the table. Don't necessarily just consider yourself a wholesaler. If that's what you want to do, stay in that lane, no problem. But listen to what I'm saying, is that if you get an opportunity that might be something that's a ready to issue or an RTI, that means that is, say, plans and permits were in place to execute on I'll just use a single family home as an example, single family home, right? Or maybe there's a property, especially here in Los Angeles, they're doing a lot of urban infill. You can convert a garage and put a different address on it and really kind of like finagle, property that might be there, or do a junior ADU or an ADU, some value add addition. You got to check with your local ordinances. But anyway, if you get a property that comes along that maybe you can do that too, but it doesn't pencil out per se as a flip, you can still wholesale that deal. So don't leave money on the table, because if you live in a place like a Los Angeles, which is a major city, like most major cities, they ain't making any more land. So whether or
Mhm.
not your local ordinances have these things in place, I assert they're coming to a town near you. So put deals together, see what you can do, and
Mhm.
that's where I travel. Yes, I do some wholesaling with the fix and flips, as I would call them. But the truth is, I do better at actually deal architecting with these type of gray area deals where it's the RTIs, it's the, value add propositions. So it's not
Mhm.
just wholesaling. If you really, really want to be in the investor game,
Mhm.
get with what the people are actually buying and then put them in your CRM and give them what they want, not just the fix and flippers. So just let that like simmer for the audience, because I'm really serious. There's a lot of money to be made, and money is being left on the table by just declaring, I'm a wholesaler. It's like, well, I hear it all the time in our group. They just throw stuff away. I had a text message this morning that somebody wanted my opinion on something from our group that said, should
Mhm.
I do this or should I just throw it away? And I'm like, oh my God, like don't throw anything away. If anything, give it to me as an agent or give it to a local agent and get a referral fee from it. Do
Yeah.
not leave money on the table. I cannot emphasize that enough. So,
And
maybe that's not right for the wholesaling audience, but just hear what I'm saying. Anyway, go ahead, Corianne.
I'm gonna dumb it down for
Yeah,
everybody who hasn't
please.
been in the business for 18 years.
I know.
Um, because I completely agree. Like, it is about finding creative exit strategies on so many different ways of moving a property. And I think in general, getting into that creativity is so important. And it's one of my favorite parts of the business as well. I do say that if you don't have a connection to that type of unique buyer, or a connection to somebody who has a list of a lot of unique buyers, it gets really difficult. Like, it gets difficult. You'll hang on and white knuckle something that you can't know the buy price for because you don't know where the buyer lands. And that's where people like you are needed in all of our repertoire of being able to contact and say something like, I honestly think the only way that this thing moves is with a listing. Like,
Mhm.
it needs the family with 2.5 kids. I don't care if the floor is ugly. Like, they can still move in. FHA, can we work together to get this listed? Will take a marketing fee or whatever to be able to pass this on to you. And the more of those that you can find, the better. And one of the ways to start doing that is to meet fellow investors like yourself and go, what do you need? Like, what are you after? And no, I won't take the just an ugly house with 3 bed, 2 bath answer. I want to know what neighborhood you like. I want to know whether you're willing to take on a foundation problem. Hey, what do you think about condos? Like,
Mhm.
those kinds of conversations to truly just basically reverse your strategy and go personal shopping. This is one of my favorite things, is tell me
Yeah.
what the buyer wants. I am going to go out and find it. And it's another way of approaching from that investor standpoint, with maybe not having the license or the 18 years, but still saying, like, I'm a problem solver here. You want to know me because not only do I have the capital to deploy, but I know the people who have even more capital than I do. Um, and so there's just so many ways of, yeah, just like Dylan says, like, deal architecture
Yeah.
and creating ways of moving forward.
And I know what I said was advanced, and people can rewatch this and dissect it. And by all means, it's just an invitation. If it doesn't apply to you and you just want to do wholesaling, then do that, be that. And as your career advances, say for someone like me, you get bored after a while. Like, you're just doing the same deals. It's like, how else can I put this together? So I think some of it, selfishly, is keeping my attention, right? So when I look at a deal, or what I could construe as a deal, something that comes my way, I actually think, who would this be good for? And it doesn't necessarily always have to be the person's name, like, oh, John Doe or Jane Doe, right? That comes with relationship building. It's the avatar of who the buyer would be. So if you want to play around with what I said, then do that. And if you feel like there's a sense of urgency that really calls to you after today, a week from now, you wake up in a cold sweat at 4 a.m, you're like, oh my God, that thing Renee said, I'm leaving money on the table, but I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do it. Don't freeze. go make friends with someone like me. I'm saying this humbly, of course, but like me, the agent in your area that is going to pay attention and be open to you sending me stuff. I'm easy. My biggest motto is I'd rather say no than not know. If I don't know about something, how am I going to say no to it? And it really strikes me because a lot of the interviewing that people do of me, well, what are you looking for? And all the things, it's like somebody just goes down a litany of this list, and now I'm in a box this big. It's like, if you don't check the box that's like that, then you're not going to send it to me. And I'm a one-stop shop. I'm the matchmaker. So send it to me. I'll decipher. And at least I'll give that person a no. A no is a complete sentence. If I don't have somebody for it right now, I will tell you that. But don't ghost people in this business. Do not ghost agents in this business. You get one, maybe two chances. And by the third chance, if you don't catch yourself on the ghost, they ain't going to send you anything anymore. It's not like investor to investor. They tolerate each other. Wholesalers tolerate each other, ghosting each other. Don't do that with agents, especially senior agents. I just got called to the mat on last night. I was at the stinking Whole Foods getting my food, and this other agent called me. True story. Other agent called me and said, "Hey, Renee, I sent you some stuff over the weekend. Why didn't you get back to me? You made me look bad." Okay. And I had to apologize and own my stuff. And I said, "You're right." And I said, "You know what? Here's what I will put in place, and that will not happen again. And I'm a human being like you are. If for some reason I do not get back to you in a timely manner, you have full permission to nudge me. Hey, Renee, I sent you the things. Don't just wait in the wings thinking that I've ghosted you." So I went off track a little bit, but that is such a nuance, guys. If you're going to prospect agents, they're not investors necessarily. Okay. They're agents. They don't like when we do that with each other. Don't be weird. Follow up, even if the answer is no. Because look, I just told you a true story. They'll call me to the mat. So anyway, just tell them to send you everything. You decipher how it's going to go. And as you meet other people along the way that are not necessarily flippers, you might have some good stuff, or make sure that you lock arms with an agent like me that is okay to look at everything and give you an answer and see if we can get you paid. It's almost like a referral fee. You might not make all the money in the world, but it's better than making nothing.
Yeah.
So it's good. And we appreciate it.
Oh man, the callback thing. Goodness gracious. If we could beat anything into anybody's head, it's that the giving the no on the phone, not a text. And guys, I have felt this in my heart too, that I just wanted to say, "Hey, this isn't the right deal for me. Thanks so much. Bye," on a text, because it would save me time. But the call to say, "Hey, I really tried to hit the number here. I looked at this every which way, this way, this way, this way. And unfortunately, these comps, these are the ones that are making me think this is my best number." That is going to be so well received, because people are like, "Oh, thank you. You took the time. You actually called me back. Like, I really feel like you are actually working on this with me and for me." And if they have that feeling, if they ever even do creep close to your number, they're going to call you. And it's really just that one shift that you make in your agent outreach, is to give them the no's and give them the low numbers over the phone with an empathetic tone. You'll get more callbacks. Write that one down, guys.
Yeah, that's true. And it's funny because even after all these years, sometimes I get in a mode. I got the text going, the emails going, the phone's ringing. Three things are happening at once, and we do forget, and I have forgotten, and I'm like, But even remember this: even if I don't know, a couple of days go by, a week go by, and you're like, "Dang it," don't be weird. Call up the person and throw yourself under the bus. This is something that I learned from Chris Voss, who wrote the book, Never Split the Difference. It's called an accusation audit. So you're auditing your behavior, basically, and you're accusing yourself of doing something. That's essentially where it came from. It's not maybe the most positive words, but you remember it, right? So an accusation audit, which is, "Hey, I really dropped the ball on this one. You must think I'm a total flake as a investor or as a fellow agent, fill in the blanks. And, I'm really must apologize that I didn't get back to you. And that really stinks. You probably feel like you can't trust me to send me the next opportunity." See how I did that? I threw myself under the bus. That's an accusation audit. And so don't be afraid to do that rather than justify your actions. Because when you really call yourself to the mat, by the way, this is anywhere in your life, not just real estate, because where you are some places, where you are everywhere, right? So if you do that, I think as people, we have a lot of leeway, because you know why? We do it. We're all just human beings out here. We don't come with a manual, but if you show up, kind of suit up and show up and really call yourself on something, then people will realize, like, dang, this person is really authentic. They really kind of call themselves to the mat, and I'm willing to give them a second chance. That goes back to don't ghost and don't be weird. And then don't call me in 3 weeks asking me for something, because I'll do something really polite. Another Chris Voss opportunity. It's the counterfeit yes. I'll give you a yes, but I really mean no, and don't ever call me again. And that's a human nature thing. So you're going to hear yes, but you're never going to get that yes. And you're not probably going to get another opportunity, or meaning another deal coming your way. So just do the right thing, guys. Just apologize. Don't give a million excuses, throw yourself under the bus, and keep going. And that's exactly what I did to the agent last night. And
I have an agent that comes to mind where I can use this strategy. And so I'm thinking through it. And honestly, I don't think I've ever gone that in depth. I think sometimes I've been like, hey, I'm so sorry. I know that I did this, and ooh, that was bad me, but hey, I'm calling because of this. And basically I try to go over that as fast as possible and into why I'm actually reaching out. Tell me more on the psychology behind, like, that sounds like you're really laying yourself out there. Like you're like, oh, I'm so sorry I did that. And kind of like laying on all the coals as possible. Do you then, after you say all of that, jump to next subject, or do you let them respond to you laying out on the coals?
Yeah, I let them respond.
Tell me more.
Well, this goes back a little bit to know thyself. It sounds really easy. I've done a lot of my own personal development in order to be able to sit with the uncomfortability. And, authenticity is really a vibe. It's not so much what you're saying, it's how you're saying it and who you're being while you're saying it. And so if you're really going to own something, you must own it. And people will be able to tell the difference. If I just said what I said and basically threw it up on somebody and had no real ownership, it's not even just the empathy, it's the ownership of that I did something that caused you to be uncomfortable. And what was the impact of that? And really be with that. Like this guy called me, this other agent called me, and then he outright said, now I look bad to the person who sent me the deal. He didn't have to say that, but that's ultimately what is going on. The best thing somebody can do is actually tell you how it landed on them. The worst thing they can do is not say anything. So the whole idea of it is getting in front of what it must actually feel like to them, and then you falling on the sword for it, and then allowing the silence to be impactful.
Yeah.
It just needs to be a couple of beats. It doesn't have to be oddly silent. It's just a couple of beats to land and allow somebody to be heard. Like that really stunk. No, I don't like it. Don't do it again.
Yeah.
Got it. It's not going to happen. And then let them know what you're going to do for it to not happen again. These are the things that I'm putting in place for it to not happen again, which is what I said. I said, the next time I get your text message, I'm going to answer you immediately because you're that important to me. And I know you're serious about partnering with me to move deals, et cetera, right? And that's why I said also, and by the way, here's the partnership is please, you have permission to ping on me. It's not going to happen often, but should it happen, you have permission to let me know how that's impacting you. And I'm here to receive it. Right. And it's like, hey, Renee, remember you said, get back to me ASAP. Oh yeah. Okay. Got it. That was our agreement. So communication is really about agreements. And this is really what you're doing in your life is you're setting yourself up powerfully to be authentic based on agreements. And then the other person knows what the expectation should be. And what does that do? That breeds trust. And remember what I just said. Consistency, breeds trust. And if you're in a relationship-based business, you're in a relationship.
Yeah.
Guys, if you bring this on in your real life, guess what? Your relationships will probably sing. This just happens to be real estate. So, this is what it's like to actually the art of communication. If you
Mhm.
take on the art of communication and you apply it to your work equity, in this case called real estate, that
Mhm.
will be one of your unique selling propositions, and you will do more deals, and your phone will ring, and you will have inbound calls, and you won't be chasing deals all the live long day. Do you want to do that for the rest of your career? I assert not. It sounds cool when you're in your 20s. It's not when you get past it. It's exhausting. So if I can
Yeah.
get ahead of something and give you some information, take what I'm saying, because
Yeah.
people will also feel heard and respected, and they want to do business with people like that. Because
Yeah.
in the investor world, people are flakes. They don't want it anymore. I'm telling you, I've got my little black book of people ain't never going to hear from me again,
Mhm. Mhm.
because they were all the things that I'm not talking about and then some. So be better. Yeah.
I mean, worth the conversation in just or accusations audit,
Hmm. Hmm.
because I I don't think I've ever taken it to that extent, because what I am afraid of is actually the result you want. And I love this comment by Dylan, because I'm like, oh, it all clicks, because my concern is that they would be like, I don't feel that way about you. But if
Hmm.
you look at it in a psychological way, it's like that's actually the response I want. Is I will lay out completely all the things that I could be perceived at, because I was a flake to this particular agent. But to some extent I want them to respond just as Dylan says here.
Yeah, I like what Dylan said, and that's a great, kind of layman's term of what it is that you're falling on the sword, so to speak, for yourself. And then as human beings, this is all neuroscience. This is not like it's my opinion. So as human beings, we like to actually kind of correct. We like to be right about things. So if I fall on the sword for something and I have made myself sound worse than the situation, and then you, right, just as an example, and you're like, oh no, Renee, it's okay. You know what? Like, it happens, you're human, blah, blah, blah. See, now the person has kind of like course correct the action. And they've told me that, they've given me that permission. They've given me that kind of out, so to speak. And I didn't sit there and just try to ask for forgiveness. Remember, it's better to ask, for that. But when somebody else discovers it, then they have ownership of it, versus me trying to give a whole bunch of reasons and excuses. People don't really
Mhm.
care. They don't, unfortunately. Maybe your mom does, but that's about it. Not in business.
Yeah. When have you ever had somebody who just flat out agrees with you, and then how do you move forward from there? If they're like, yeah, you did do that. You're just like, okay, cool. Are you still
Yeah,
willing to work
that's what happened
together? And
yesterday.
then
Yeah. So what you do is that you put in place the things that will cause you, in essence, not to do that again.
mm,
So, and I said it, but I'll say it again, right? So
yeah.
this guy said, literally outright said to me, you didn't call me back. I didn't get an answer. I'm asking you just to give me an answer. No is an answer too. If you don't want them, just give me an answer so I can tell my partners, because
Mhm.
there are other wholesalers, there's other people involved.
Mhm.
What's up? Because we don't want to do business with flakes. Basically, that's what he said. And I'm like, got it,
Yeah.
copy that.
Yeah.
And I said, it happened.
Mhm.
I did an accusations audit, and then I told him what I will put in place. And what I will put in place is I will get back to you ASAP. Either if I'm on the phone and I can't give you an answer, I will say I will give you an answer by X, like within the hour, and then I will do my comps and I will get you an answer, whether it's a yes or no, within an hour. And if you haven't heard back from me in that time for whatever reason,
Mhm.
you have full permission to just reach out to me again, because my commitment is to get you an answer. That's all he asked for. So that's my commitment, is to get you an answer. He doesn't care if it's
Yeah.
a no. He's not begging me for a deal. He's just, what's up? Do you want it? Do you not want it?
Yeah.
So it sounds really
Love that.
simple, but guys, life is kind of simple in that way. If you really think about it, it's like, all right, that's what I'll put into place. How many times have everybody on this call been ghosted and you didn't get an answer? And you're like, did they want it? Did my text go through? Did the internet go down? Like, I don't know. And now that's in your space. People don't
Yeah.
want that buzz in their space.
Yeah.
Be flat with people. Be like, hey, yes or no. People
Mhm.
appreciate that. So anyway, that's the short answer. But yeah, you just keep it simple and then keep your word to that. If you keep dropping the ball, it's like kind of words are only worth so much. So if it happens 5, 7, 10 times, oh, sorry, I forgot. Oh, sorry, I forgot. You're on thin ice. So you got to
Yeah.
show up for people. Yeah.
And then, I mean, at that point, you've got to ask yourself if you trust yourself to do what you say you're going to do. I think that was one of the biggest shifts for me in business is when I started to realize how important consistency was, not only to my business, but to myself. Like the consistency, and you and I have talked about this before, but the
Mhm.
consistency of when I turn off work. It's important for my family. It's important for my business, but it's also important that I learn to trust myself, that I will do that for myself even if I don't know what else I'm supposed to be doing. And this has always been hard for me. I'm like, if I don't have a task to do, then I should be working. Is like my fallback, and it's a very unhealthy one because
I
I often find myself working then because I'm not taking the time to just think or sit on the
Mhm.
couch and enjoy listening to what I might need to be doing for myself. So here's a
Oof,
rabbit
that's a
hole,
hard
but
one. Well, there's a season for it too. You know, I'm in that season again in my career where, oh my gosh, I mean, I kind of fight it, you know, where I'm in the season of momentum. Let's call it momentum rather than hustle. I'm in the season of momentum, and I just had
mm,
yesterday, so it's the 1st of April, happened to fall on a Monday. That's my business coaching call. I have a business coach, and we laid out the second quarter. And in one sentence, the second quarter is rinse and repeat of the first quarter. Guess what the
mhm,
first quarter was? Work my ass off. And, you know, that's a lot when you're kind of a one person show. But the light at the end of the tunnel is, you know, I have some personal debts I'm paying off. So there's that in my background. But then also creating like a war chest of money, you know, so that I can employ people or however that's going to go. I'm going to call it employ people, you know, so that you attract and retain help. Now that
mhm,
brings its own level of stuff, but let's just say, you know, you have help. So you know, when you're doing it all yourself, it's really it can be challenging and you feel like there's no light at the end of the tunnel, but really becomes a time management conversation, and this is challenging. It's a lot easier said than done, but I have it right here on my phone in my calendar, and it says, okay, at this time I'm doing this. And then I will stop and I will do the other indicated action, even if I have not completed the first action. So like if I'm doing
mhm,
acquisitions and I'm just doing outbound calls and follow-ups, I do that from 8 until noon. And then I take a break and then I do wholesalers and then I do buyers. So now I'm doing outbound, you know, reach to buyers. And
mhm,
if I haven't completed all the tasks for follow-up, then guess what? I get to do that after I talk to the buyers. And this is just what it looks like right now. So it's like 6 solid months, if you will, of work that this is what it looks like. So that's very long-winded, but I really want people to hear like you're not alone in this. And you don't have to do this forever. But I will tell you this, if you don't do it and set down the foundation, then you're going to be doing year one again. And a
mm.
lot of people do that. They do year one for 20 years in a row. They don't really ever actually build anything.
Yeah.
You know, ask me how I know. I've done year one a couple of times in my career. You know,
Mhm.
it happens. Like a whole year goes by and you're like, oh my God, what did I just do? And now I'm doing the same thing and working hard and hard and hard and not always smart again. So it'll get away from you. Anyway, time management. So put it in the calendar, do what you say you're going to do and the time you're going to do it. That is a potential definition of integrity. And then that'll give you the mental freedom so that when you want to sit on the couch and stare out at nothing and think, right? Because we need time to do that. I
Yeah.
assert in your background, you don't have any kind of guilt. You're like, well, there's always more in the inbox, but at least I said is what I was going to do. I made 30 contacts today. That's my minimum standard. I want to do 50, but I did 30 or 35 and I completed the task or
Mhm.
work on Saturday and be done with it. And then take time off. Sometimes you just got to go. You got to
Yeah.
go for a walk or something like that. You're like, you're no good at just staring, you know, staring at the computer. Just go and then make it up later, but make sure you do those numbers in the week so you don't fall back and do year one again.
Nobody wants that. Honestly, worst feeling, and I've been there before where you're the same time in the year as you were last year. You're looking down the pike and you're like, how am I experiencing this again? And one small reminder for those that have or are experiencing that, and this is one of my favorite metaphors that I carry with me, is that you have still stayed on the path. So you are higher up on the mountain. You're on a switchback.
Mm.
You're looking at the same view again. But because you continue to take action in the right direction, you are a little bit higher. Just we have to deal with the same view. And so, man, I'm really grateful. Thank you for giving me some insight into like how you approach, because you're right, you are such a unicorn as both an agent and an investor. And I think more and more people are starting to straddle that line. And what that really means is solving problems. Like, you are out there with every piece of the puzzle and you are looking for matches and you're finding other sides of that match. And coming with that energy is so authentic, no matter what kind of player you are, even as just an investor or just an agent. I'm here to solve a problem. Do you have a problem I can help with?
Mm-hmm. And coming from that place, whether it's an agent, yeah, like you said, an agent or an investor. And I think approaching it that way and also verbally saying it as such, it's refreshing. It's what we're all doing, but nobody really says it. So find your voice, in this, and double down on that. And it won't be hard for you. The one issue I think with social media that I didn't have, growing up, or at least even in the early part of my career, is the good news was you were just your authentic self and you only had a one or two, maybe a rock star here and there to look out at. Now it's like there's too many choices. And so just really take some of that quiet time that you talked about and really go within and decide, what's going to make your heart sing. Like for me, I love matchmaking. I've done that in other careers that I've done. I love taking group A and group B and putting them together. That sounds like it would be fun, but maybe that's not for you. Maybe you're better at something else. Maybe you want to do something else. Maybe you want to be behind the scenes. I don't know. You'll figure that out for yourself. But whatever that is, then it doesn't become so much like work. It's not so arduous. And then team up. Team up with someone like Corianne or myself, who maybe is, a different personality or is in front of the camera and you're more behind the camera, whatever the case may be. It's like knowing thyself. And that'll really get you further, because that's half the battle in authenticity, is just showing up to what makes your heart sing. And then follow up with that with your word, right? Like, hey, I'm going to do this, and then follow up with it. And that's the formula, guys. So, you can say all the right things. We can talk about scripts. I know we kind of did a little bit of scripting in here. We'll double down on it, next week, so that you guys have some real takeaways. But that, at the end of the day, it's just like, you be you, and then refine that craft, and then go find some people to support you within that, so you can do it all together. And then, go be of help and go be of service and just make the world a better place. Because that's what we really need. Gone are the days of the me generation. That was the 80s. That's what I grew up in. It's all about me. How much can I suck the bone out of this marrow for myself? That doesn't work anymore. It's all about how can we help each other, really. And go find your people, and you'll make good money and help people in the interim, because that's what people need, is help, for sure. They want it too. Yeah.
Absolutely. And we're going to continue to have this conversation throughout the quarter. And we invite everybody that joined us today to come back, because one of the big questions is scripts in general. We're going to be coming back to different kinds of scripts, what we see working. And then we're even going to be testing it out over the quarter by hearing Renee on the phone, by hearing me on the phone. So save it on your calendar, Tuesdays at 2 Mountain Standard Time. We'd love to see you back here to continue this conversation on what works. And thank you, everybody, for hanging out.
Let us know. Appreciate you guys. Thank you for your time and attention. Be well.
Be well.